In 1637, a single flower bulb sold for more than 10 times the annual income of a skilled craftsman. Families sold their homes. Merchants abandoned their shops. An entire nation went mad over something that would bloom for just 1 week. This is the story of how beauty became greed, and greed became disaster. Amsterdam, February 1637. The streets were filled with wealthy merchants in fine coats, talking excitedly outside taverns and coffee houses. The Dutch Golden Age was at its peak. Ships brought spices from the East Indies. Banks overflowed with gold. Everyone felt invincible. The economy was booming like never before. But inside those taverns, something strange was happening. Men were trading pieces of paper, not for land or gold, but for flowers that had not even bloomed yet. The tulip had arrived in Europe just decades earlier, and now it controlled everything. Everyone seemed calm. Families ate together. Children played in cobblestone streets. But beneath the surface, a fever was spreading. People whispered about fortunes made overnight. A blacksmith had bought a bulb for 12 acres of land. A sailor traded his ship. No one questioned it. After all, prices only went up. Then, on February 3rd, 1637, everything stopped. A routine tulip auction was held in Haarlem. Buyers gathered as usual, ready to bid. The auctioneer presented a rare Semper Augustus bulb, one of the most prized varieties in all of Holland. Bids were expected to soar. But when the auctioneer called for opening offers, silence filled the room. Not a single hand went up. The auctioneer tried again. Still nothing. Panic crept into his voice. He lowered the price, then lowered it again. No one moved. Within minutes, whispers turned into shouts. The tulip market had frozen. By noon, the news spread through Amsterdam like wildfire. Traders rushed to sell their bulbs before prices dropped further. But there were no buyers anywhere. People who had invested their entire savings now held worthless paper contracts. The bubble had burst. In just one day, fortunes vanished. Men who were millionaires at breakfast were bankrupt by dinner. What happened next was financial chaos on a scale Europe had never seen. Within 48 hours, tulip prices collapsed by over 95%. A bulb that sold for 5,500 guilders in January was now worth less than 50. Merchants stood in the streets, holding contracts they could not honor. Debt collectors knocked on doors. Families watched bailiffs take their furniture, their paintings, their entire lives. The sound of sobbing echoed through neighborhoods that had celebrated wealth just days before. People could not believe it. They kept thinking prices would recover. They waited at taverns, hoping someone would buy. But no one came. The tulip, once a symbol of status and beauty, had become a symbol of ruin. Men stared at the bulbs in their hands, realizing they had traded their homes for something that would die in a week. The psychological collapse was instant. Trust shattered. Friends became enemies. Business partners accused each other of betrayal. But this was not a simple market crash. The truth was far more disturbing. Most of the people who lost everything had never even seen a tulip. They were not trading actual flowers. They were trading promises. Pieces of paper that said they owned a bulb that had not even been planted yet. It was all speculation. Pure gambling dressed up as investment. And the people at the top, the ones who started it all, they had already sold. They walked away with fortunes while everyone else drowned in debt. Even more shocking, the government had seen it coming. Records later revealed that officials warned about the bubble months earlier. But they did nothing. The economy was too good. Tax revenue was pouring in. So they let it continue. They let ordinary people destroy themselves chasing a dream that was never real. To understand how a flower caused this catastrophe, we need to go back to 1593. That is when the first tulip bulbs arrived in Holland from the Ottoman Empire. They were exotic, colorful, and unlike anything Europeans had seen. The Dutch, famous for their love of gardens and beauty, became obsessed. wealthy aristocrats began collecting rare varieties. Owning a vibrant tulip garden became the ultimate status symbol. But tulips had a unique feature. Some bulbs developed a virus that created stunning, unpredictable color patterns. These were called broken tulips. No one could predict which bulbs would break, which made them incredibly rare. A plain bulb could suddenly become priceless. This randomness turned tulip growing into a lottery, and people love lotteries. By the 1630s, demand exploded. But tulips only bloom once a year and take months to grow. Supply could not keep up. So traders invented something new: futures contracts. You could buy a tulip that had not even bloomed yet. You paid now, received the bulb later. This allowed people to trade tulips year-round. Suddenly, it was not about flowers anymore. It was about speculation. Prices stopped reflecting reality. They reflected hype. The Dutch economy made it worse. Interest rates were low. People had cash. The plague had killed thousands, leaving inheritances. Workers had extra money and no experience investing. Tulip trading seemed simple. Buy low, sell high. Everyone was doing it. Bakers, cobblers, farmers, they all joined in. Taverns became trading floors. People quit their jobs to trade full-time. It felt like easy money. By March 1637, Holland faced its darkest moment. The crash had spread beyond tulips. Banks that lent money for bulb speculation now faced mass defaults. They tightened credit, which hurt legitimate businesses. Unemployment spiked. Trade slowed. The entire economy, once the envy of Europe, was on the verge of collapse. Foreign investors pulled out. Amsterdam's stock exchange saw panic selling in other sectors. The tulip crash was becoming a full economic crisis. Families who had seemed secure just months ago were now lining up at charity houses for bread. Children went hungry. Elders who had saved for decades watched their retirement funds evaporate. The psychological trauma was profound. People lost faith not just in markets, but in their own judgment. How could they have been so foolish? How did an entire nation fall for this madness? The shame was overwhelming. Slowly, painfully, Holland began to recover. The government created arbitration courts to settle disputes fairly. Some debts were forgiven. Others were restructured, but it took years. Most traders never got back what they lost. The tulip market still existed, but it returned to normal levels. Bulbs that once sold for thousands now sold for a few guilders. The flower became a flower again, nothing more. The economy stabilized by 1638, but the scars remained. Families rebuilt, but they never forgot. A generation learned a brutal lesson about greed, speculation, and the dangers of believing something is valuable just because everyone says it is. Trust in financial markets took decades to restore. Laws were passed to prevent similar bubbles. Holland survived, but it was forever changed. Tulip Mania was not really about flowers. It was about human nature, about our desperate need to believe we have found an easy path to wealth, about how fear of missing out can override common sense. Every person who bought a tulip bulb at inflated prices knew, deep down, that it was insane. But they did it anyway, because everyone else was doing it. Because the person next to them was getting rich. Because they could not bear to be left behind. History has repeated this pattern countless times since. Stock bubbles, real estate bubbles, cryptocurrency bubbles. The details change, but the psychology stays the same. We forget the lessons of the past because we convince ourselves that this time is different, but it never is. The tulip sits in gardens across the world today, beautiful and humble, a silent reminder that value is not determined by hype. It is determined by reality, and reality always wins in the end.